Hi everybody, welcome back to IndyCar. It is the 10th, isn't it? The 10th? Yeah, it is the 10th of July. I'm Gordon Ross. In today's show I wanted a theme. The theme today is going to be about self-doubt and self-confidence, and also leadership, when leaders are either leading you to salvation, somewhere safe, or whether they're leading you into disaster. So I thought we'd start with the disaster theme first. And in keeping with the disaster theme, obviously we need to talk about Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt. And it's generally thought, almost by everybody I've spoken to in the entire universe, that neither Jeremy Hunt nor Boris Johnson are going to be particularly good leaders for the UK. Is Jeremy Hunt going to win? Well, I think the bookies' odds against that happening are pretty steep. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion that Boris will probably win this because he's popular with his own right-wing supporters, and all of the mood music and all of the things he's been waffling about and avoiding are basically the same things that he's waffled about and avoided all of his life, and virtually everything that he has promised will probably never happen. But it doesn't matter, because that's not the point here. The point here is they want to appoint Boris as the pro-Brexit Tory leader who's going to lead Britain to a brighter future outside of its major trading partner. Is that going to happen? Well, we don't know, but what we do know is that in approximately 12 days' time, one of these two men is going to draw the short straw. And by that I mean he's going to be the unlucky one who both leads the United Kingdom to disaster and forces the whole union apart. So it's almost inevitable this is going to happen. The more that you hear in the news about being crushed by Theresa May, this is the latest bit of propaganda coming out of the media today and yesterday, was that Theresa May had a war chest, which sounds a bit like some kind of affliction, and that she was going to use it to crush Scotland and crush the independence movement. Well, I've not seen an awful lot of crushing going on, have you? And I wonder often about the United Kingdom when just about everything that it does with foreign and domestic policy is seen in terms of a war. And somebody else was pointing out to me yesterday that even sporting events in England are preceded by marches of the army, flypasts of the military planes, or in the case of Wimbledon, a march of the Royal Air Force around some kind, around one of the stadiums where they hold the Wimbledon Championships. So England's got this thing about everything has to be a war. And there's war chests, and they're fighting Europe, they're fighting the Scots nationalists, they're fighting against Irish reunification, they're fighting this, they're fighting that. It's all warfare with England. There's nothing in here about negotiation or diplomacy or anything of that sort. It's all about war, and everything that England does is a battle against the bad guys, a battle against the other people, the brown people, the foreigners, the Europeans, anybody that disagrees with England is at war with them. And this is the kind of problem that we're stuck with. This is the mindset that the media has got into as well. But when I said that leadership would be either into disaster or away from it, I think it's important to remember which side of this equation you're on if you live in Scotland. And if you're living in Scotland, no matter where you came from originally, you're basically on the side where your leader is leading you out of disaster, not into it. And that's the important distinction. No matter how you feel about the SNP, and no matter how you feel about Nicola Sturgeon as a person, you can't deny the fact that she is the only one who is actually saying that Brexit is a terrible idea and it is going to cripple Scotland, and we should give people the right to choose independence or Brexit and have a choice made in Scotland with our own kind of vote. Right? It doesn't need to involve England in any way. Scotland has already voted, as we know, over 60% have voted not to leave the European Union. And the support for not leaving the European Union has gone up to over 73%. Every single independence poll is now putting sentiment towards independence well above the 50%. The lowest I've seen is 57%. And so all of these polls are indicating that the support is there. And the support is there because the leadership is there. And the leadership is, I think, a crucial point. And it's a crucial point where the leader, in this case Nicola Sturgeon and Mike Russo and John Swinney and the other big members of the Scottish Cabinet, this is the time when these guys need to show their leadership skill and banish self-doubt and have the confidence to take the country forward with its own vote. Now, I've already stated that my favoured method of achieving independence would be to do it with a Holyrood general election in Scotland, organised here using the system that we've been given for voting, and including 16 and 17-year-olds and Europeans, including everybody who happens to live in Scotland at the moment, including English people incidentally, everybody included in that franchise. And by doing so, we get a chance to choose whether we want to go down the plug hole with England, which is what they're doing at the moment. England's like circling the drains now as we speak. Unfortunately, they are trying to pull us down with them, and at the moment we are on the cusp of making a decision which will affect the entire course of Scottish history. We're at this critical moment, and this is where the leadership is needed. Now at this point, but you'll understand why when you hear what the subject is. You'll remember that there was there was a huge outcry in Scotland when Cineworld decided that they wouldn't show Fadgen's new movie about Robert the Bruce. Now, there were never any really good satisfactory reasons why this cinema chain decided not to screen them, but what was bizarre about it was that their original reasoning behind this was they didn't want to screen a movie because they didn't feel it would be a commercial success in England, because it might portray English people in some kind of negative way. Now I'm going to come back to this in a moment, but the point is that eventually the outcry was so great, and even Angus MacFadyen himself was appealing to his own supporters and everybody else in Scotland to get behind this. Eventually, Cineworld had to back down and show the movie at their theatres in Scotland. Now, even if Cineworld had said, well, it's not going to go very well in England, there was no reason for them to ban showing it in Scotland. They just decided to do that, and now they're regretting it. Having said all that, I wanted to tell you I went to see this movie last night, and I went in I was hoping it wouldn't be. I was hoping it would not be another Braveheart, because all the talk in the lobby outside the theatre was it's made by the same producer who did Braveheart, and it's going to be like the next stage of Braveheart. I thought, dear, I hope it. I find at this point in any way, this was a beautifully written, beautifully shot story, and you know the irony of it, despite Cineworld banning it because it might upset English people, there wasn't a single Englishman in the movie. Nobody was portrayed as English. No English soldiers were committing atrocities on screen. No Scots fought against any English soldiers that you could see. There was a brief flashback to the Battle of Methven, where you see mounted knights with helmets on beating the Scots. But that was it. It was a brief 30-second shot and it was over. And the rest of the movie had no English people in whatsoever. It had a Scottish story, and it was told not about the events which we know about the Battle of Methven, when the English garrison in Perth decided to ambush the Scots while they slept, after promising them they would do battle the next day, and they raided and launched a surprise night attack. And that was what broke Bruce's army up. He was sent on the run into the Highlands, pursued by countless English soldiers and other clans who had been bought off by the English king. And there was a price on his head. So he was hunted down, and even in this movie, this is a story which is fiction, but which is positioned in that grey area between events. When Bruce was on his own, his army had been scattered, he told his men to go home and go back to their families, that he was beaten, he was giving it up. And because he had a price on his head, some of his own men in this story turn on him. The story really starts to take off after this period. He barely survives this attack, and he is finally rescued by a family who live in this small croft. And I don't want to give away a lot of spoilers, but the tensions in the croft mostly between the children, believe it or not, and King Robert, because all the children in this family had been orphaned with their fathers fighting for Bruce. It's also a story about Bruce's confidence in himself and in his quest. Was it worth it? And it was also about the way the children, or one or two of the children, blamed Bruce for losing their father. Now, this is a human story. This has nothing to do with history, but it looks at Bruce the man, and McFadden portrayed Bruce as a man who was stricken with guilt. He had murdered John Comyn in a church, on the altar. That was the ultimate sin. He was excommunicated by the church. The whole of Scotland was excommunicated with him. Everybody that he got involved with either ended up getting killed or being on the run, and he was feeling terrible. He was at the lowest point of his life when his family takes him in, and during that winter, a particularly harsh winter, they're snowed in, and it's about how the relationship between the family and this, what should we say, this king, this man who is at his lowest point in his life. He's nearly been killed, and he has lost all his fire, he's lost all his mission in life, and it's about how he gets that back. But it's also about the faith of his own followers later on in the movie, which I don't want to spoil anything else for you. The rest of the story, I would advise you to go and see this movie. It's beautifully shot, it's well acted, the children are particularly good in it. Now, as a critic, I would have to say that some of the accents are a little bit dodgy, but that's simply because the actors are not Scottish, some Irish. But the film itself is beautifully made, it's haunting, it's very involved, it's extremely emotional. There are small, short combat scenes in them, but the interesting thing is the combat is not between the Scots and the English. It's between the king and his supporters and other clans who are trying to hunt him down. There's bounty on his head. So nobody in England would have been upset by this movie, because there's virtually no mention made of England in this. It's all at a distance in the past. What McFadden has done here is he's woven the story of his own making between historical events, and he's portrayed Robert the Bruce as a human being, which I think hasn't been done before. So I would recommend you go and see the film. There was a good crowd when I went to see it, and I was surprised how many people turned out on a wet night. Now, the reason I mention this movie is because we are coming to a similar point that Bruce came to, when our leaders have led us to a point where something big is about to happen. And everybody has to hold the line, everybody has to keep faith with the leader that they are going to take us to that final showdown, this final confrontation with our opponents, and this time we're going to win it. And this is the time for us, as followers, if you like, for us to have a bit of faith in ourselves and not to turn on each other. That's what this movie was about. It was about the Scots not turning on each other, but keeping the faith in their leader. Their leader who they hadn't seen for a winter. They almost assumed he was dead, but they still waited for him, and he arrived back. And we know the rest of the history because Bannockburn was a victory for Scotland. It was a turning point in Scottish history. We're at a similar turning point now, or we're about to enter it. And now is the time when we have to remember not to turn on each other. We're all trying to fight for the same thing here. And all of these, of the rhetoric coming from our opposition south of the border in Westminster is all pushing us, and we have no power. We can't do anything about it. And we have no way to beat the mighty British Empire in this particular confrontation. But this is wrong. You're not fighting a battle, and that's the mistake that Westminster makes. They turn everything political into a fight, missing them all the time. We're not fighting a battle against England here. We are fighting. We're campaigning to change people's minds, and we've done so now. The support is there. Our leader has the support of the majority of Scotland, and it's now time for Nicola Sturgeon and her team to have a little faith in us and say, right, now we're going to go for this final push. And that final push has got to happen after Boris Johnson has been placed in power. As soon as he's there and his cabinet is formed and we know what the direction of Brexit is, that is when action needs to be taken. And what action is not for me to decide. There are a variety of different things which might happen. Some people say that the first thing Boris Johnson might have to do is call a general election, because he believed when Gordon Brown was made Prime Minister that was democratic, and he would never let that sort of thing happen again. And he's now in exactly the same position Gordon Brown was in, where he's about to be made king of the election. He's be elected democratically. Does Boris Johnson have the moral courage to do any of that? I doubt it. I doubt it very much. But as far as Scotland is concerned, we are now in majority for leaving the United Kingdom, for ending our treaty with England. England is out to end our treaties with 27 other countries without our permission. Scotland is going to lose 27 trade partners because of something which the British government has decided to do, and which the English and Welsh people have voted to do. And therefore Scotland has got a choice to make. That choice is now over to our leadership to decide when we make it and how we make it. But the people are ready. The supporters of independence are ready. Not the supporters of the SNP. The supporters of Scotland's future are ready. We're all ready. And we need to say this to Nicola Sturgeon. We need to say it to the SNP. Now is the time. We're right there with you. We're ready to go. We have a majority in every poll. Only the English government can produce polls which appear to muddy the waters. But we know that the support is there because we are the ones who talk to people every day. We are the ones whose voting neighbours say to us, well, I'm not doing that again, I'm going to vote for independence. We're the ones who see it, the reality. So, like I say, the film last night kind of inspired me a little bit to make this post today. But we are at that stage. Like Bruce's supporters, they waited for him. They waited that whole winter until he reappeared with fully recovered from his wounds and having regained his strength and regained his sense of purpose. Even though he was still struggling with a lot of guilt over what he had done, he carried on with it and he succeeded. And believe it or not, in this movie, something which was missing from The Outlaw King, which I thought was a shame, was his spider in the cave. In this movie, you won't be disappointed. Anyway, I'll see you all later. Have a great day. But remember, now is the time. We need to be ready to move as soon as our leadership tells us. See you later.